You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amba TV.
Mama Amba, with your love for us, we can assure Ambazonia is free. Today on Mother's Day, we shine a heartfelt spotlight on the mothers of Ambazonia, whose spirits in the face of unimaginable trials remain unbroken and fiercely radiant. Each Ambazonian mother stands as a testament to resilience, nurturing life and hope in a landscape marred by turmoil and the harshness perpetrated by French Cameroon's brutality. Their pain is deep, having shed blood and tears for their beloved land and lost children. Yet in their profound grief, they have not buried their beliefs in freedom and justice, but have instead sown these values even deeper in the soul of Ambazonia. Their love, boundless, their courage, immeasurable. These remarkable women have faced the darkness, yet they continue to embody the light, remaining fruitful amidst adversity. Their labor tirelessly, not just in the fields of their cherished land, but in the heart of their communities, nurturing the next generation with the strength and wisdom of warriors and peacekeepers. Their hands, though weathered by hardship, are the same hands that cradle the future, that plant seeds of hope and sustain the spirit of independence that defines Ambazonia. Today, we honor the Ambazonian mothers who, in the silence of their sacrifices and the loudness of their battles, show us what it truly means to fight for the essence of home and freedom. To every mother who has picked up the metaphorical weapons of resilience, love, and unyielding faith in the face of adversity, your valor inspires us. You do not fight alone. Your dreams for a peaceful, independent Ambazonia echo in the hearts of many around the world. On this Mother's Day, we celebrate you, Ambazonian mothers, not just as the hearts of your homes, but as the undying heartbeat of a nation striving for its rightful place under the sun. Your resilience sketches the blueprint for Ambazonia's tomorrow. May your tears of yesterday water the seeds of tomorrow's freedom, peace, and prosperity. Happy Mother's Day to the unwavering, formidable mothers of Ambazonia. Your strength lights our path to a brighter future. Mama Amba, with your love for us, we can assure Ambazonia is free.
Critical breaking news. NBC News, that's Nebraska. NBC News has confirmed that Donald J. Trump is the winner of Pennsylvania. We got Nebraska on the board. They're going to switch it out. Pennsylvania, seen as really the prize, 19 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the projected winner, according to NBC News, for Pennsylvania. Donald Trump will be speaking in a couple of minutes in Florida. We're going to obviously go to him when he does begin to speak. Quickly, David, I want to go back to you. You mentioned $50 oil, and this is very important. A lot of people think that Donald Trump is, quote, good for the oil industry. I would argue he's probably good for the services companies like Baker Hughes, Halliburton, the ones that help people drill. But if we drill, baby, drill, and there's more supply than demand, I think your point is very well taken about $50 or even lower oil.
100%, Brian. But I mean, we're talking about what's good for the American public. I know the oil companies are near and dear to many hearts of people who watch the shows here and trade the stocks. But this is something that will really change the balance for the American consumer and American business, and people like Tillman, who you had on there, that has a pretty big energy bill with all the hotels and everything else that he's running. This is a big deal. It's a big story. And it really is, as Jay said earlier in one of the segments, this is the key to understanding Donald Trump's plan. This is how you get lower inflation, lower unemployment, and lower interest rates all at the same time, and not have a sort of standard Keynesian storyline that the only way to get inflation down is to kind of blow up the economy and raise the unemployment rate and weaken growth.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Welcome to the Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, and happy Friday. Today on the Horizon, we will tackle two topics. Hopefully, we have time for the second one that has to do with diabetes. But we'll begin with the topic of the elections, which recently took place in the United States of America. November 5th was a very, very significant date in the United States. It was the second time in its history that a female was the presidential nominee for a major party. I'm talking about Vice President Kamala Harris, who was the candidate for the Democratic Party. And she ran against former President Donald Trump. And we know the results already, that Trump was elected President of the United States of America. Today on the Horizon, I have Dr. Fred Lobati. Our goal today is to talk about the United States of America's electoral process, how they get your president, because people are confused sometimes about why certain times somebody may win the popular vote and lose the presidency. We will also talk about La République du Cameroon, how it does its own thing, what the process is like in La République du Cameroon. But then we want to find out what it is the take-home message for Ambazonia. We are an emerging nation. What should we learn from both processes so we build a best system possible for our nation? Dr. Lobati, welcome to the Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. I'll give you a minute to greet everyone and we can proceed. Welcome to the Horizon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mappy. I'm very happy that we have this opportunity to share our own opinion and assessment of what just happened. You know, the United States is one of the greatest countries, actually the greatest country on earth right now. Everybody around the world looks up to the United States to find out what's going on. It turns out that more people outside of the United States know more about what's going on in the United States than many people who live within the United States. So why is this country this important? And of course, and how they choose their leadership has just happened. And the interesting thing is that the results almost shocked everybody. Even those who say voted for Trump were shocked that he won. And those who had anticipated or expected that Kamala Harris will win based on polls and the momentum towards the end of the elections were shocked that she didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to analyze it. I hope the emotions are down, you know, one way or another, whoever you supported, so that we can coolly, with cool heads, analyze what truly happened and see what we can learn from it for our people, the children of Ambazonia. I also want to say here that I personally am neither a Republican nor a Democrat, and my opinion are personal, based on my information that I've gathered. So it's not binding to any specific person. It's based on information that I've gathered, and I have good reasons why I have the opinion that I have. And I hope it's going to help most of us to process what truly happened here in the United States.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much. A good place to start will be to briefly look at the origin of the United States, to talk how this nation became the United States of America, and to remind or educate our viewers or listeners how this how the nation came up with their constitutions. You know, that's where we start. So, Doc, without further ado, briefly touch on that before we continue on
Correct.
this.
So, like we just said, the U.S. is the greatest and most important nation that everybody looks up to. The world economy is about $100 trillion. The U.S. alone contributes 1/3 of that economic activity on planet Earth. Militarily, the US alone spends most in military expenditures, the most powerful nation militarily than the next 20 countries put together. So it's a very important country. And because of that economic power, that's why many people look up to the US, and that's why many people try to flock to the United States. So we need to find out, how did these people come about? Unfortunately, people believe that America is a young nation. But I would like to tell or inform our people that no, America is like the first of the current modern nations. I know that Europe has a long history. You talk about what happened in the mainland Europe, Britain, and all the other places. But the boundaries of the current modern nations, most of them were delineated after the United States was founded. Remember, the US was declared, they declared their independence from Britain in 1776, and then they constituted their constitution around 1788. The first president came to power in 1789. And then you had the French Revolution in 1789, and the French went over from a monarchy into a republic. And then in 1800, England united with Scotland to form what is called Great Britain. So you see that Great Britain came after the US was already established. And of course, you had the colonial times when Britain controlled a fifth of the whole earth. And basically, the impact of Britain determined the boundaries of the current nations. Britain controlled right through to China, India, of course, Pakistan and Bangladesh and the Middle East, and of course, all across Africa. So that most of the nations going right far to South America, everywhere, their boundaries were determined through colonialism. And that was mostly after the United States had been founded, like I said, declared in 1776. So the US actually is the first among the modern nations. The boundaries of the current nations, though the indigenous people may have a long history, say the Chinese have a long history, or the Russians have a long history, or the many European groups have long histories, the current boundaries of the nations that are determined, of all of those, the US is the oldest or the first among them. So let's go back and see where the United States started and how it started, because this may help us understand truly what transpired in the elections. This is, again, my personal opinion, please. What actually happened is that, the Catholic Church was very dominant in Europe, controlled even part of Britain. And eventually, with time, the King of England was unhappy with the Catholic Church because they did not want him to marry two wives. And so he separated the English Church from the Catholic Church and founded the Church of England, of which he is the head. Till today, the King of England or the Queen of England remains the head of the Anglican Church, which is the British Church. So what happened is that in England itself, you had people who disagreed with the high-handedness of the British Crown and the religious practices in Britain. And so you had a group of English people who decided to leave England, and they first migrated to Holland. And then from Holland, they came to the United States as the Pilgrims. And these people arrived and founded their first colony in Massachusetts, in Plymouth, in 1620. Now, I said the United States was founded, or they declared their independence from Britain in 1776. So from 1620 to 1776 is over 150 years that these people had separated themselves from England, went through Holland, and then arrived in Britain, in the United States, to settle. The purpose was these pilgrims came mainly for religious freedom. And they were not happy with the religious practices in Britain. These pilgrims were English separatists who fled to the Dutch Republic, the persecution that they were experiencing in Britain, and they thought that they were having more freedom. When they arrived Holland, they were not very satisfied. They thought that there was more religious tolerability over there, depends on how you interpret it. And so they wanted to move further to a land where they would be free to practice their religion based on their faith and have more freedom and look for more opportunities for themselves. That is how they landed. The popular Mayflower Compact was found when these pilgrims then arrived and created the Mayflower Compact and established a colony in Massachusetts in 1620. They were initially called the Old Comers and the Forefathers and became known as the Pilgrims. which then progressed from there. Eventually, they formed colonies, and of course, you know about by the 1776 they had 13 colonies. That's a conglomeration or groups of people that have migrated to the American territory. I don't want to talk yet about American Indians. That is a separate topic. I don't want you to dilute what we're talking about here. I'm talking about the whites that left Britain, mainland Europe, arrived in the United States for religious reasons, founded colonies, and by 1776 there were already 13 of those colonies, and they had formed governments among themselves in their little colonies, and they had their governors. But because Britain was still trying to control them, they decided to declare themselves independent from England, and in 1776 that declaration of independence was made. But as they declared themselves independent, they did not immediately have a president, or they did not immediately have a constitution. They then took time, and 12 years after the Declaration of Independence in 1788, the Constitution of the United States was ratified. And by 1789, they installed the first president, who is George Washington. Now, that is just a brief history of how the United States came about. I can now give some information about what they consider to be the form of government. Now, as indicated, they moved here principally for religious reasons, to have religious freedom and freedom to enjoy life and the pursuit of happiness as declared in the Declaration of Independence. And so when they now formed the government of the United States, they wanted to make sure that it was separate from control of a king or a queen or a crown. So they called it a constitutional republic. That means a country not controlled by monarchs and guided by a constitution, which is a common agreement of the people how the government will be ruled. And so the constitutional republic is a form of government where the people elect representatives to exercise power on their behalf. And the government is based on a written constitution that limits the power of the government and protects the rights of the citizens. The term constitutional republic is often used to highlight the separation of powers in a republic, which is a system that prevents anyone or office holder from having unlimited power. Therefore, when they were forming this republic, they decided to do everything to separate powers. The government is divided into separate branches, such as the executive, which represents the president, the legislative, the group that determines the laws of the land, and the judiciary that tries to implement the laws and determines any punishment for those who violate the laws, with each branch having its own powers and responsibilities. This system of checks and balances prevents any one branch from gaining too much control. The elected officials, the people elected the head of state or other representatives, rather, having them assume office based not on heredity, not on the fact that you were born to somebody, but that the people have chosen you. And the written constitution is the supreme law of the land, written by humans, and both citizens and the government officials are required to follow this law. It establishes the rules of governance, citizens' rights, and limits the power of the government, because you can have an overreach. The independent court system, if there is a dispute about the meaning of the Constitution, an independent court was put in place to determine the outcome. Basically, that's what is going on here in the United States. And so they put all these things in writing, and they determine that every 4 years, the executive will be elected. That means the leader, who is called president, will be elected. Every 2 years, the members who represent the people in the legislature determining the laws of the land are elected. And every 6 years, those who are in the upper house and making sure that the lower house does not overreach in legislating, but that they watch and talk and agree on what is they consider good for the nation, they are chosen every 6 years. And according to what they determined, they made it in such a way that there will be a balance, so that one very large group does not dominate a minority group. And we can go into that in more detail. But basically, that's how the people of the United States came about, and that's how the government of the United States came about, and that is what is being practiced in this country.
Thank you so much for impacting us with so much knowledge on this topic. Moving along, let's like get to the meat of the discussion today. Let's talk about the electoral process. We hear words like electoral college, we hear popular vote, we hear swing states, we hear registered voters, mail-in ballots. So kindly go over the electoral process and explain why a presidential candidate may win a popular vote but not become the president. So I think that really warrants us to understand exactly how this came
Correct.
about and how
And
it's
actually,
practiced.
for those who, as they say, are history buffs, who are very interested in reading details, this was a point of contention among the founders of the United States as they were crafting the Constitution of the United States. If you read it in details, they really argued among themselves in good faith, without fighting, without anybody being killed, what would come out as good for the nation. There were some of the states initially that were smaller in proportion in terms of numbers of people living there, and there were some that were larger. And they were concerned that the group of individuals that are larger in proportion may dominate the smaller people, the group that was smaller in size, and eventually take over control. And the group that is smaller in size will feel like they don't have a voice. So they tried to bring a balance. And so what they said was that each region or each state will they want to make sure that every citizen who is eligible to vote votes. Initially, when they first started, it was only the men who voted. We need to know that. The women never voted, the slaves never voted, and if you were not yet considered a citizen of the United States, you were not eligible to vote. There's a process to become a citizen of the United States. But if initially, when it started, if you were a citizen of the United States, and at that time mainly a white American, then you could vote. So you American Indians were not considered like citizens of the United States to be able to participate in the votes. And as I said, women also did not vote. It took hundreds of years before women were able to vote. And it took a very long time before slaves were even allowed to vote. And population was counted, and they distributed power in the legislature based on the population count in each region. If you read further, at that time, before the independence, before the emancipation of the slaves, a black person was considered 3/5. That's 3 out of 5 of one person. So a white person was considered one, and a black person was considered only 3/5. And that's how they put the people together to determine the size of, say, a state. That helped them to determine, when distributing, let me call it a national cake, as we call it in Cameroon, to know how much goes to each region based on the population. And so, anyway, so the popular vote is when you have had everybody who is eligible to vote, and they choose their leaders. And in the United States, what they determined was that each state will have, based on the proportion of population, a certain one person representing a group, a population size. Those are the members of Congress, which is equivalent for all states. And then above that, they chose what you call the senators, and they made sure that each state has two, so that a state that has a very large population like California only has two state senators, while a state that has very few people, say like Wyoming, has also two state senators. But in terms of the members of the House of Representatives, a state like Wyoming only has one member of the House of Representatives, because this is divided based on the number of people living in that state. While a state like California has millions of people, I think over 55 million, they have a lot of members of the House of Representatives there, because that proportion should be almost equivalent to the people that live in a state like Wyoming. And so when they now are tallying the votes, the people vote for their representatives to give a voice in selecting who the president would be. And so all the members of the legislature that represent the state plus the senators together constitute the electors for that state. So a state like Wyoming has 3 electors. The one that represents all the state in the legislature because of the size being small, but 2 senators representing, so that gives you 3 electors. If you go to California, if you put all the members that represent the legislature proportionately, then you add 2 senators to them, that gives you the number of electorates. Every 10 years in the United States, the population is counted to make sure that as people move from north to south, population increases, that the members of the legislature is distributed equitably all across the land. And so anyway, that is a rough estimate of what happens there.
Wow, exciting. So you just went through that. Let me just read a few things here. California has 54 electoral votes. I think that's the largest. Small states like Texas also has 40. Texas is a large state. It has 40 electoral votes. Wyoming has 3, like you said. Washington has 12. Trying to look for one with the smallest. I think that's
That's
the
why
one with 3
Alaska has
votes.
3, for example. Alaska has
South
3.
Dakota,
They have some
South Dakota
small,
has 3. Alabama 9. Alaska has 3 also. Maine 4. There are some 2 states that have split electoral votes. I don't know if you want to mention that.
correct. That is a different issue. We will go. That's Maine and Nebraska. But basically, and this split is based on the legislature, not the Senate. So basically, what they discovered is that in very large cities, so you have a conglomeration of people who live in large cities, they may tend to vote one way while the remainder of the country votes a different way. So those states like Nebraska and Wyoming and Maine, they decided to make sure that the vote of that large population in that inner city counts and will not be drowned by the voices of the others. While in other states, as they say, the winner carries the election. So that's why they separated that to give respect to the inner city group. It will be almost like in California saying that Los Angeles, San Francisco, those big centers will have more voice than the rural areas.
Okay, so let me just talk about this a little bit some more. So when people go out to vote in the United States of America, in the different states, they are really voting the electors. They are going out to vote for those who go and cast the ballot, vote for them eventually in December, which is when it happens usually in December. So a state like California that you mentioned is the largest state in the union. Let's just assume that we have 50 million people, and all 50 million people vote for. I'm just giving this as a point of discussion. Let's say all 50 million people, which is not the case. Let's say all 50 million people voted for Kamala Harris, right? So they get the electors who will go cast that vote and get 54 electors votes, because California was given just 54. Then a state like the smallest one, let's say South Dakota, right? Let's say it has only like, let's say that it has 1 million people. I'm just using that. I don't know exactly their population.
It has just about 600,000 people. It's less. I think
Okay.
Wyoming
So
is
let's
lower.
about 600,000 people. Let's say all the 600,000 people. Let's even say 2/3 of the 6,000 people vote for Trump. So the 3 votes will go for their electors. You know, that's 3 votes right there. Eventually, there comes a time, which is what happened in 2018, where some states have such a large population, like California and some other states, New York and all the like, where most of the people voted for one candidate. But because the other states may not have that much population, but their electors go for the other candidate, the total electoral votes from the college exceeds the 270 for the person who had less popular votes. So that's one thing that people don't understand, right? I just wanted you to make sure people really understand the difference. Again, I'm trying to
Correct.
say it in my own words,
Correct.
but
Basically, you would realize that the population rich, let me call it population rich states like California, in this second now is Texas, it used to be New York. And
in
then
New
it
York.
looks like Florida has actually overtaken New York because Florida has electoral vote of about 30 now, while New York has somewhere hovering around 20, no longer, or just above 20, no longer as much as Florida. So what you realize, population rich centers like California, Texas, Florida, and New York, and some other states, just the size of the population can vote. And so if you go by the popular vote, as they say, they will always drown the voice of those other people. Say in Wyoming, they will have no voice in federal issues. So that's why they try to bring some balance. Remember, in each of those states, the winner takes all. So what I'm saying is that, say in California, not all 55 million Californians voted, say, for a Democratic platform. There were still people within California that voted for a Republican platform. But because the Democratic Party, for example, won the majority in California, then California carries forward all the Democratic electors. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Same thing with, say, Texas or any other state. And we talked about those other states that have made a little differentiation, like Maine and Nebraska. They made sure that some regions, like the inner city, say around Omaha, which is the capital and the biggest city there, and in Maine, that when they, being large population center, if they select somebody, even though they may not be the majority in the whole of Nebraska, they will let their voices count by being one of the electors, and the rest of the state will be the
Okay.
other elector. That's the things that people, different individual states can decide if they wanted to do that. If they did that in California, what will happen is that California will not carry all its electors and give them, say, to the Democrats. You have some that will be Republican and some that will be Democrat.
Awesome. Okay, moving along. Let's focus on to a little bit of details about the recent election, the last election. It was a remarkable one in the sense that, as I started from the beginning, we had a female running. In the history of this country, this is the second time. Remember, in 2018, Hillary ran against the same person. That's the irony. This female are running against the same person, Trump. So, considering that the population of the United States of America has, I think the 2020 census had 168 million women compared to 165 million men. So it seems as if the gender distribution is more favorably to women so far. Taking that into consideration, and what really happened, what propelled Trump to victory, in your own opinion?
Okay.
Let's talk about
That
that.
is a that is a very interesting thing. I believe personally that it was based on cultural values. And I'll present my own opinion. You can have yours. But basically, I told you that originally the pilgrims who came to the United States came here based on their religious beliefs. And they want to be able to exercise their religious freedom of worship. And with time, as the United States has changed, these guys, these predominantly Caucasian people, have discovered that their faith is being undermined in the sense that the people are no longer allowed to read the Bible in schools, for example. People are not allowed to pray in ceremonies using the Christian faith because people have come forward and said it offends them. Like Muslims may say it offends them, Jews can say it offends them. Atheists, those who say they don't believe in God, will say it offends them. So it even went to the point where the Supreme Court agreed with these guys. And so you have a cultural conflict where the Caucasian population that came here for religious freedom, and their offspring are feeling like the reason they came here for and what they stood for is being pushed to the corner, and while others who have come after them are dominating and being allowed. So, for example, you will find Even though they're suppressing Christian practices in public, they allow other religious practices in public, and so they feel pushed to the wall there. Then the other aspect is my own personal opinion here is that they notice that they what they consider to be the cultural norms are being undermined. The denaturalization of that which they consider to be normal. You can specify, like when people talk, say, of about abortion, it's almost like a woman naturally is pregnant with a baby, and then somehow you decide to go and remove that baby and throw it away. They feel very oppressed. That's why the issue of abortion has been a hot topic in the US that has been going on for a long, long time, even reaching to the Supreme Court back and forth. Then recently, you notice that there are tendencies not only to promote, say, homosexuality, where a man is marrying a man, a woman is marrying a woman, and in some cases, like in Canada, people are even allowed to marry animals. Different story. Not yet in the United States, thank goodness. But also, people can now transform from their gender at birth. When a child is born, you just look at the genitals and determine that this is a boy or this is a girl. We don't want to talk about the hermaphrodites. That is a biologic something different to talk about. That's a minority. But just looking at the natural, you see that a child is born at birth and looks like a male or looks like a female based on their genital organs. But science is able to transform you from, say, the male into the female using hormones and surgery. And so some of these people are feeling like there is denaturalization occurring, and they feel like their faith is being suppressed, and they were trying to do everything to reverse things or to prevent it. The momentum was just too fast for them. And the question is, who of these two candidates, when they look at them, I know they all have their flaws or their strengths, who of these candidates will promote what they feel deep in their spirit is good for them? And that's how some people voted. So, for example, if you take somebody like Trump, everybody knows and everybody confesses that he has his flaws. I'm not an advocate. Remember, I started off by saying that I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat. And if you talk to me privately, I'll give you more information why I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat. But when they looked at a candidate like Trump, who has a lot of flaws and whose verbal utterances are repugnant to even the Christian values that we were talking, these cultural values, and they look at the other side, they have the feeling that the persons who promote the cultural values they stand for, the religious belief system deep in their hearts, plus what they actually resettled here for, plus the natural things that they consider to be the normal, the person who promotes that more for them, they believe is the Trump train than, say, in this case, the Kamala Harris train. And so when they went to the polls, even though, for example, like you mentioned, women are more in the majority, and for the first time in the history of the United States, a woman has never taken office, where this would have been the opportunity for all women to say, let's have our turn at this. And I believe a woman would do better than men, is my personal faith, that women will do better than men in that office. It's not something reserved for men. But because of these cultural values, even some of the women themselves voted against or voted for Trump. And then, of course, the men have their chauvinistic tendencies. There are some men who just feel like men should be in charge, control everything, and even if their brains are not really working properly, and they don't have the moral fortitude to lead, that men are just supposed to lead because they are men. So some of these tendencies contributed. That's why you will see that a majority of the white men voted for Trump because they don't like a woman leading them. Even the Hispanics, a majority of the Hispanic males voted for Trump. And if you go and look at the African American votes, you notice that more African American women voted, say, for Harris, and more African American men voted for Trump, though it was not the majority of African American males. But more African American males voted for Trump than voted for Harris. So that is more the chauvinistic attitude, where the male feels that because you are the man, you should be the leader. Anyway, it's just my take on that one. You can give your own opinion about it.
Yes, thank you so much. I will disagree with you on this one, and let me give my reasons why. I know you talk about Christianity and all the practices that are not really viewed by a typical Christian as proper. But I think that this case around, the reason why Trump won has more to do with misogyny than and a little bit of race, more misogyny and a little bit of race, because I believe that if Biden, remember that Kamala Harris got into this just 3 months ago. All along, there was no primary for the Democrats. They had already had their candidate, which was Biden. But 3 months ago, because of Biden's health and the way they were seeing him as somebody who was not able to stand head to head with Trump like he had done in the past, and this really had to do with his ill health at that time. So they didn't have that much support for him. But if he was in great health like he was 4 years ago and was able to express himself well, go around campaigning vigorously like he did in the past, able to debate Trump and defeat Trump, then all these other factors that the Christians look as a negative point that the Democrats push would have been minimal. Yes, there are a few people that would have still voted for Trump because of that, but it wouldn't be as much as the fact that men prefer to be on top and they would not prefer a woman to be president. When you look at that data that you just mentioned, sex by race, 59% of men, white men, voted for Trump. 59%. 54% of Latina men voted for Trump. And then the little aspect for race has to do with the white women. 52% of women voted for Trump. So the prevalent people that voted for Kamala were black men, 78%, black women, 92%, Latina women, 61%. So the majority of votes came from white men for Trump and Latina men. And think about their culture. In Latina homes, most of them prefer the man to be on top. They don't really support their women to be on top in terms of making decisions and all the like. Same with the white culture. And they have women out there. I bet that a lot of people in public were saying negative things about Trump. But when it came down to that time that they are in the casting their ballot where nobody is seeing them, they chose Trump. So the question is, and I don't think that, and I say that is more the case than racism, because remember, Barack Obama won the presidency twice and he was a black man. So I cannot say race is the case, otherwise Barack would have never been a president because he was a black man. So this time around, it's more about misogyny, where they think that a woman cannot be a leader of the strongest nation in the world. And I bet a lot of military men in the military did not vote for Hillary, they voted for Trump. That's my position, my take on this. Let's move along because we don't have much time. Quickly, what do you think? Will a female ever be a president of this great nation called United States of America?
I believe it will eventually happen, but it will take a very long time still. We have seen women rule all around the world, even in Britain. Besides the Queen of England, you had Margaret Thatcher, May, and others who have been prime ministers in Britain. In Germany, you had Angela Merkel. The French have not yet had a female rule them. They always have this Le Pen come and campaign, but she never really wins. So the French have, if you go in throughout their history, they have never really had a female rule them. And in Scandinavian countries, they are used to having females rule them. Go back to big democracies, like they say, India is the largest democracy based on population size. Women have ruled in India, like Indira Gandhi and the others, even in Pakistan. So even in Israel, you've had Gilda Meir and others, women who have ruled over there. I think that it will take a long time before a woman rules in the United States, but I personally believe that with time, eventually it's going to happen. Even after we are dead and gone, it doesn't have to be during my lifetime. I believe that the society will continue to evolve and change, and then eventually a woman will come to power. The cultural values that I just talked about, things erode. People are going away more and more from doing that which is right, from doing that we consider to be great. So, as I'm not saying that the woman will come to power because people are no longer morally right, but I think that that force that caused people, even some of the minority groups like the Hispanics that voted, some of them was because of these cultural values that I'm talking about. So with time, as entropy, as they say in physics, increases, the grip of that moral tendency will reduce. And as the society changes, eventually a woman will win and become president of the United States. But I cannot tell you when that's going to be.
All right, let's move along to talk about La République du Cameroon. So since its birth in 1960, it's had only two presidents, Amadou Ahidjo from 1960 to 82, November 82, and then Biya from November 82 till now, right? If the technician can put that picture, there's a clip that has all the presidents of the United States compared to La République du Cameroon. I think that's a great visual effect to see how things have progressed in the United States compared to the stance, the one person in charge for forever. Paul Biya, from 1982 till now, if he's still alive, and plans to be the president next year around when the time for election takes place. Let's talk about La République du Cameroon. I have a document here that says, it says report of the Commonwealth Observer Group. And this document has how elections are carried out in La République du Cameroon. It has a political background, the electoral framework, preparations for elections, the campaign and the media, the poll count and results process. So it's a long document, and I don't think we really have time to discuss this. I think there will be another day where we can talk about this in more details, that will get some of the lawyers involved in this discussion. But for the sake of comparing what is happening, let me just read this and then I give you an opportunity to talk. The electoral framework, okay? It says the legal framework governing presidential elections in Cameroon consists of various laws, beginning with the Constitution of Cameroon and subsequent amendments, which relate to the vacancy and election to the presidency, the revision and recompilation of registers of electors, vectors, registration cards, and the establishment of the National Elections Observatory. So there's a constitutional background to this, to the election, just like in the United States of America, there's a constitutional background, how elections are run. And the electoral law talks about the nomination process, that the law states that any candidate wishing to stand in a presidential election shall declare her or his candidature through a declaration bearing her or his authenticated signature. Such a candidate may either be nominated by a political party or stand as an independent. Nomination papers must be submitted to MINAT, MINATD, or in special cases to a divisional office. A copy of these papers must also be submitted to the Constitutional Council. It goes on and on. Doc, briefly talk to us how elections are carried in La République du Cameroon.
Okay, I'm going to use a word here that I would like our people to search the meaning of that in your dictionary. La République is a contraption. Contraption. And it means a machine or device that appears strange or unnecessarily complicated and often badly made and unsafe. So we need to talk about the contraption called La République du Cameroun. We need to remember that La République du Cameroun does not have any sovereignty. It is controlled by the French presidency. Every administrative policy, the president and the ministers are directed by the French president through the ambassador in Yaoundé, the French ambassador in Yaoundé. So there is no sovereignty being exercised by La République du Cameroun. We also need to remember that before they gave them their so-called independence on January 1st, 1960, Ahidjo, who was handpicked by the French and imposed on the La République citizens, had to sign an agreement of cooperation with the French in 1959. And that cooperation agreement stands till today, where the French control all aspects of the population, their politics, their economy, their education system, and even cultural activities. Till today, you can read it. There are 6 points. If anybody does not have it, you can Google it. The French cooperation agreement with Francophone Africa or even Cameroon, you will find it freely online. So that contraption called La République du Cameroun has never been sovereign. It's controlled by the French for the purpose and well-being of the French. And so all these elections that we're talking about here is guided by the French for the sole purpose to ensure that the French continue to control the territory for their benefits. That is why I read the document from first page to the last. What you realize there, the bottom line of it is that the so-called Minister of Territorial Administration is the one who will approve presidential candidates. Can you imagine a minister who is appointed by the president and is serving supposedly at the basically the pleasure of the president in office, being the one to decide who eligible presidential candidates are, even during this time that they have a so-called constitutional council. The document basically says that people who want to run for office can apply even at the DO's level, the divisional officers level, and a copy will be sent to the Constitutional Council as well as the Minister of Territorial Administration. And if you keep reading, it says that it is the Minister of Territorial Administration who decides who are eligible presidential candidates. That is already the place where the rigging has already taken place. Then if you go further and you realize that the person sitting in that office now is my classmate Paul Atanganji, who is even the most fanatical minister of who worships Paul Biya literally as God. And so you can imagine that's why he is able to tell somebody like Kamto and threaten him and warning him, because he has the power to make Kamto ineligible or whoever else is a threat. So that is already the first place where the rigging has already taken place. So what I'm trying to say is that all elections conducted in La République du Cameroun are fake, and they are already false from the very beginning. And this happened during Ahidjo's days. Ahidjo was imposed on the French. The Mbida was the prime minister at the time. The French brought Ahidjo from let me call it from the north, from the bush, poorly educated. He just left their baccalaureate and was a telegraph officer in the post office. In those days, telegraph was important. It's like sending emails today. He was a telegraph officer in the post office. They imposed him on them and then made him to go to Paris as one of their senators representing La République du Cameroun, and eventually made him their president and suppressed those others because the French were afraid of them. And subsequently, when we were forced to join them, Ahidjo was imposed on us as the leader, and in each election, they imposed him as a unique candidate. Remember, they had suppressed all political parties, so no competition.
Yes.
And the party chooses the leader, and they even bribe individuals to make sure that there's no internal opposition. The only person we know that ever opposed Ahidjo was Ngomjua in 1975 in Bafoussam, where they were choosing the presidential candidate, and they were unanimously singing hallelujah to Ahidjo. And Joa said, why must you always be the candidate for president? It can be almost anybody. And you know what happened afterwards? Joa was killed. by Ahidjo afterwards. And the elections are rigged. You can see it in the referendum. Because when they went to the so-called referendum in 1972, people only had the choice to vote yes in English or oui in French, which is yes. There was no option for no. And that's why they only came out with a result that was 99.99%. They only subtracted a few little 0.00% one to give the impression that it was not 100%. But these elections are sham elections and they are rigged. And I want to assure our people, this rigging has not just only happened during Ahidjo's time. During Bia's time, the machine was perfected and has continued till today. But I want us to realize that the fact that the so-called Minister of Territorial Administration is the one to decide who are eligible candidates for president, that is where the rigging has already taken place. Then he now gives instructions to his governors that are subservient to him and the DOs that are subservient to him to ensure that from all the different local areas, the elections are rigged in the favor of the master that they are worshiping. And then to give the impression to the international community that there was some level of competition, they just tweak some little numbers here and there and tick some little numbers here and there. That's why you hear them say Biya won 89%, most recently 71%. But then if you truly win an election to 70 something percent, wouldn't you be free among the population because they love you? It will be a sea of people that love you. But instead, this guy is shielded by the military and is only running away and using the military to oppress the people because the people don't like him. They will never have voted for him. All those elections are fake and false. That is my take on that.
I'm going to have us put that picture that has the different presidents that have been in the United States from when Biya took over. I don't know if that can be put on the screen. But the irony, Doc, is what you just discussed. Even France, that is behind this madness, has had so many presidents, right? They've had elections and have had so many presidents, but they are controlling our own to put puppets there. Look at this picture from 82 when Biya took over. The United States has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 now coming up. Different presidents because they have a process in place. But we have Biya for 4 decades. And if he had his way, if Biya were to live forever, Biya would be the president forever. That's just the fact, the way the system is. So I was saying that it's so ironical because France, that has this system for La République du Cameroon, has had different presidents, from de Gaulle to Mitterrand to, Macron now. There's so many presidents in between. So why is it that they insist on controlling
Correct.
La République du Cameroon to maintain?
I think actually,
yes.
I think the French want to prove to us that we are fools and we have no control. That's why they maintain people like Paul Biya in power forever, to the point where even as a dead man, they want to declare him the president who won the next presidential election in 2025. I don't know, people may not have noticed. Atangana, who is the president of the Constitutional Court, just declared that Paul Biya is their presidential candidate. And Camto has filed a lawsuit against him saying that the Constitutional Council is supposed to be indifferent. And how can the president of the Constitutional Council come out and tell the people that Paul Biya is their presidential candidate when he is supposed to be neutral? I mean, sometimes they don't even know how to hide the stealing or how to camouflage the falsehood, because at least they would have let that president of the Constitutional Council to be mute about this. But he comes out in support of Jacques Famendongo, plus people that have been bribed, like happening in Manfei and some other spots in the usual culprit in English-speaking Cameroon. After they have given them some envelopes or bribes, they come out and say they want Paul Biya to run. When the man is literally physically incapacitated and likely is dead, but they are using modern technology to give the impression that he's alive. Remember, he can have a body double going around looking like him. You can have a mask figure put on a human being looking like him. You can do so many different things to give the impression that he's alive when the true person is long dead. And they want to literally use that method to deceive and then eventually put until the French would have put the person that they want. I think the French are trying to give us the impression that we have no control, we are fools, and they put pepper into our eyes by insisting that this man must still run and then still win the next presidential election. That is my take on it.
Okay, Doc. So let's get to some details now. Let's compare, because we want to compare what is happening in the United States to what is happening in La République du Cameroon. Based on this comparison, we can see what, in essence, we would want for Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. You can take down this picture now, please. Thank you for putting it on. So let's compare. First of all, the fact that La République du Cameroon has this 7-year. Well, let me have you speak. Go ahead and tell me what when you compare them, what are the things that you see that are similar?
We already gave the outlines of how the nation of the United States came to be. They had already put in writing that presidential elections will be every 4 years, and it's determined that every 4 years, the first Tuesday of November, the presidential election will take place. That's written in stone. Mm-hmm. It's not something that is questioned. And every 2 years, there will be congressional elections written in stone. It's not something that you change. If you look at La République du Cameroon, they can shift the calendar based on what they want. However they see the wind going, to appease the people or manipulate the people to get the outcome that they want. So that's one big difference there. But also, you realize that here in the United States, for those who live here, they do everything possible to make that every person who is eligible is registered to vote. When you go to get your driver's license or renew it, they verify to make sure that you are registered where you live to vote. And you can even declare whether you adhere to one party or another, or you are an independent, but they want to make sure that you have your electoral card. During elections, even it's every 2 years or so often, which every year there's one election or the other in this country, they send people information to remind them that this is the time to vote, this is your electoral card, this is where you can go and vote. And if you watch out during this election this time, not only this time, but frequently, up to a month before the elections, they give people room to go and vote, because many things can happen in your life. You may be traveling, so many things can happen, and you don't want to miss the date of election. So they give you room to go and vote, and they have so many places. You can go to a public library and vote. You can go to your city council office and vote, and so many other neutral places that are not affiliated to a specific party. So that is already one difference. They want to make sure that the most people have the opportunity to vote as much as possible. In La République du Cameroon, what do we see? They do everything possible to ensure that people that will likely not vote for the president are not registered in the electoral register. They say that you must have a national identity card before you can register. And then after you go and pay high fees to the police station to get a national ID, you don't receive the ID card for a long time, so that you will not be able to vote. That is already one method. They do this selectively in areas where they think the opposition is strong. Then they go to areas where they believe the people will fanatically vote for the president, like say in the southern region or Wonderland or the east. They make sure that everybody has a card, even people who are not Cameroonians. For example, people from Central African Republic who in the war they took refuge in La République du Cameroon and came to Betoa. They make sure that they are registered and will make sure that they vote for Biya. If you go to the north, people who run in there from Chad, they are Kuseri and other places, they make sure that they are registered and vote fraudulently. While citizens of the state that pay taxes, that work and were born there, they make everything to ensure that they don't have their ID cards and that they are not registered. And even those who were registered are removed, and even polling stations are shifted at short notice, and you don't know where you're supposed to be and confuse them so they don't vote. So it's a dishonesty of that contraption that I was talking about. That is one major difference that you can see between La République du Cameroon and the elections in the United States. Now, there is rigging occurring everywhere. I don't want to go into some nuances of subtle rigging that occurs in the US, but the one in La République du Cameroon screams to the heavens that even little children can tell. Children in primary school can tell that rigging occurs all over the country. For example, here in America, elections are done and you get the results within 24 hours. Other many African countries, elections are conducted and results are got. You have results within a few days. In La République du Cameroon, in this modern era, they say they need like 2 or 3 weeks because of the communication. They cannot get the results from Sabon Gari 2 or 3 weeks. That is just time for temperatures to cool down. They doctor the numbers, and then on a Saturday night, while people are sleeping, they come out and announce the results where people cannot go out on the streets. Where you wake up on Sunday, the streets are all filled with troops, making sure that nobody ventures to oppose what was said. So that contraption is, in fact, is an enigma in itself. That's one of the big difference between this country and that. Ensure that everybody here who can vote knows that they can vote, is registered and encouraged to vote. And those who don't want to vote do so based on their conscience. You are not compelled to, but they encourage you as much as possible to go and vote.
One more thing, Doc, that I want to add to that list is the fact that in the United States of America, you can have an incumbent president win and rule and be a president for another 4 years. So the maximum that anybody can be president is 8 years, maximum. As a matter of fact, I made a mistake last time. I think I was talking to Dr. Ella 4 years ago after Trump lost. And I made a comment that, oh, that's it for him. He's not going to come back. So that's what I thought at that time. And he corrected me, are you sure? Because he has the right to rule again, come back. And then I did my reading and so, oh, yeah, oh my goodness, I was, that's my personal view, because I would not say on air whether I wanted Trump or not, but I was sure at that time that he couldn't come back to be the president. But I was mistaken because, of course, the law says that you can be a president for 4 years. For 8 years total. Now, La République du Cameroon, they have this 7-year thing that you can be the president and then run again, and they run again, and they run again. I don't understand why that is something that could not be in their constitution. Even if they want to go with 7 years, let it be maximum 14 years. I think the 7 years is already too long in itself, as when I compare other countries. 7 years is too long, let alone double that, 14 years, triple that, and now we have Biya there for more than 40 years. This is toxic to any country. Toxic.
Actually, there was a limitation in the so-called constitution that was chaired by Joseph Owona, and it was Achille Acho, now dead, who was bribed with the Santa Mafia to come up and claim that it is illegal, it is not normal, it's anti-democratic for a competent president to have term limits. And then they used him to pretend that in 2008 the term limits were gotten rid of. Basically, La République du Cameroon can only reflect what the French tell them to do. Remember, there was a time when it used to be a 5-year term. At that time, the French presidency was every 5 years.
Exactly. Yes.
And actually, France used to be calling provinces. And then when France reigned to regions, then La République now started calling our provinces regions. They are only like a parrot articulating what comes from Paris. All right. So when the presidency in France was every 5 years, in Cameroon, it was every 5 years, and they rigged it. Then during the time of Mitterrand, it was changed to every 7 years. Mitterrand came to power in 1981. At the time I was in Germany, and he ruled for 14 years, and Jacques Chirac was the mayor of Paris, and he came up and won the prime ministership, and there was the coexistence and all that, what they talk about. But eventually, after Mitterrand, you had Jacques Chirac. So then the French, after Jacques Chirac, they went back to every 5 years. When the French went to every 7 years, La République and Mitterrand was in power, changed theirs to every 7 years during Joseph Owona's so-called constitutional committee. And they limited it to 2 terms. And then when La République used Achille Acho and the Santa Mafia to change it, they did not change the 7 years. That is why we still have the 7 years. If the French want them to change it, they will change it. They do what the French want them to do. Remember, they are serving at the pleasure of the French. As long as the French use them to control the economy for their welfare, they let you be. Even a dead person can rule. La République is actually not very wise at this. The North Koreans are better. In North Korea, the founding president of North Korea is the eternal president, even though he's dead. And any other president ruling afterwards is subservient and lower to him. All La Republic is trying to do is to give the impression that they practically their Biya is still alive. Don't be shocked if one
You
of
know,
these days his creators will also say that he is the eternal president of Cameroon. It depends on whether the French will want that.
talking about that, I'm just going to move to say just this topic about whether he's alive or not. I just want to read a few tweets here that came from Thibaut Nash about him.
Mhm.
The very first one that came out, I know I'm going off topic a little bit, but bear with me. The very first one that came out in October 5th, he said, we may be seeing the final scene of the final act of 91-year-old Cameroon president, 41 years in power, who is allegedly in Geneva for medical treatment and hasn't been seen since leaving Beijing on September 8th. I can imagine all the maneuvering in Yaoundé. Then he said on the 9th of October, things getting stranger in Cameroon. When the regime has to insist publicly that 91-year-old Presbia is alive and in good health, it's a huge red flag. Then parties allied to Biya's CPDM are urging Biya to run for press again in 2025. Science fiction? We're talking about elections. That's why I think that these are all relevant. Then on the 11th of October, he said, so Cameroon government has made it illegal to even discuss President Biya's health. This marks of desperation and shows, that's marks of desperation and shows lack of confidence. This will just make people more concerned, plus talk even more about President Biya's health. Such steps make regimes less stable. And then on the 12th, he said, the Cameroon government should end all speculation about President Biya's health with a non-doctored photo or video. Otherwise, rumors will intensify. The people have a right to know it's their country. And then on the 14th, he said, any experts out there in Cameroon's constitution, what does it say about succession in case the president leaves office, by whatever means, before finishing the full term? What takes over and how? Who takes over and how soon are new elections required, assuming the government would follow the constitution? And then on the 16th, he said, in any democratic country, it would be unthinkable for the head of state to disappear for a day, let alone a month plus. Shows the degree of autocracy plus impunity of the Cameroon regime and how little they care for their own people's concern. These two shall pass, God willing. And then on the 18th, he said, while Cameroon Press Biya's opponents have focused on his mysterious month plus absence, his supporters should also be upset. Does it make sense for the regime to keep people who want to wish the press well totally in the dark about his welfare, whereabouts? Arrogance plus impunity. And then on the 22nd, he said, so long missing Cameroon Press Biya has allegedly returned to Yaoundé. Lots of folks still wondering whether it really happened or if it was government manufactured fake news. I have not a clue either way. I'm not going to read the rest of what he said. And then on the 24th, he said, torture, or that is something, that's the torture of the world of Longue. Anyway, I bring all this up to say that we're talking about elections and we're talking about somebody who is the current president and nobody knows anything of what is going on. And that's one comparison between the United States of America and La Republic. Because in the United States of America, you're not going to have a president disappear for one day without anybody knowing where the president is, or 1 week. If the president is sick, they will say the president is sick. They will even have the hospital where the president is being treated. But not this SHIT country that we call La République du Cameroun, where things are happening in a different way. We're going to be ending soon. Let's talk about the aspects of the U.S. and La Republic elections that Ambazonia should avoid. Do you have any take? Something that we don't want
Correct.
to use
Yes.
Ambazonia?
Correct. So anyway, also in the United States, before I go into that, you notice that even when the president is undergoing surgery and is under anesthesia, he has to hand over power to the vice president until he recovers from the anesthesia before he takes over power when he is in sound mind. La Republic can never come to that level, so just forget about that contraption. You go and look up that term, you understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, we realize that the United States has so many things that they do that we look up to, and the rest of the world believes is like a beacon, an example for other democracies to follow. You notice that they conduct presidential elections here actually 2 years before the election took place. Campaigns start 2 years before. People starting to put themselves out there as candidates, and a year before, the parties start gathering together and choosing their candidates, and eventually they have ample time to choose. And then during elections, of course, they make sure that everybody is registered, everybody is encouraged to vote, they know where they're supposed to vote, and they're given time, like even a month ahead of time, to ensure that you register your vote. Those, I believe, are some good aspects that we need to emulate in Ambazonia to ensure that every eligible citizen of Ambazonia knows that he is eligible to vote, he is registered to vote, and is given the opportunity to vote long ahead of time. And only those who, by conscience, totally don't want to vote can decide to stay away, not because they were prevented from or defrauded of an opportunity to express themselves. We can learn that. The things in the United States political system that I don't like, and I've been here now for 30 plus years and observe it since, I don't like the idea of demonizing an opponent. The fact that somebody has a difference of opinion does not mean that he is not an American, or he is not a patron, or he is a bad person. It is just a difference of opinion. I believe that just as in a family you have a wife and a father gives his opinion based on his uh, natural makeup of being a man and the genes that influence his thought process and his experience and whatever. The woman also has her own experience and the genes that make up her own thought process. And the two belong together, just like the yin and the yang. When you put the yin and the yang, you have a ball that rolls. If you take away the yin, nothing is going to move. If you look at an eagle, it has two wings, the left side and the right side. If you clip off the right wing, the eagle will not fly. If you clip the other side, it wouldn't fly. So the two parts belong together to form the entity of the nation. So you don't demonize the other. They are all part of the same people, and they all have the same love and passion for the well-being of the nation. So you try as much as you can to understand where the other person is coming from, so that you find common ground and move forward. So too in a family, a husband and a wife, a man may want to spend more money in one area while the mother wants to spend it in a different area. But when they try to understand each other, they will realize that the common understanding that they now come together after talking is the best for the family and move the family much further. I've experienced it in my own personal life and my own personal house. In Ambazonia, when we started practicing democracy from 1954 to 1961, when the British with the French connived and took away our independence, our forefathers competed politely with each other, to the point where when Foncha defeated Engele in the elections of 1959, listen to this, my people. Foncha and Endele drove in the same car to the ceremonial grounds where Endele passed on the power to Foncha. Can you imagine that even happening here in the United States, where, say, Trump and Biden drive in the same car to the ceremonial grounds where they pass on power to Trump in this case, where they stand side by side and greet and hug each other and kiss each other as you move back to your home? You don't see that. Instead, what we used to see when there was peaceful transfer of power, about 1 hour before the president passed, is taken in a helicopter to his private residence, and then the one that is elected is the one that goes to the ceremonial grounds. We had a wonderful example when Endele and Foncha drove in the same car to the ceremonial ground, where Endele gladly passed on the baton to Foncha because he won the elections. Those are the good examples we want to learn and emulate in Ambazonia. And don't demonize somebody with a different opinion. Try to listen and pay attention to understand from where they are coming, and then express your own opinion after listening attentively in good faith. And if we do that, we will do even better. Now, I say sometimes listen 10 times and speak once. When you do that, you will be much wiser. Don't speak 10 times and listen once, because if you keep on talking, you will make a lot of errors. That's why those are some few examples that I'll bring out there.
Okay. And also the the 4 years term renewable, or you can do 8 years versus La Republique 7 years. That is, what do you think should be Ambazonia
Well,
should
uh,
come up with?
you remember that nobody is perfect. Nobody is
Yeah.
perfect. And so that's why we need term limits. If you don't put term limits, they say incumbency, you get to know everybody in different positions of power and you can misuse them to stay in power or perpetuate yourself in power. So, but if you have a term limit, then they know that they cannot force themselves to stay in power and they will have to go. And if you
Yeah.
have a situation where you can run again during your first term, you will do the best possible so that you be re-elected. If you know that you will not be elected again, what will be the motivation to do well? So during your first term, you will want to do so well that in an honest election where everybody participated, you will be elected again. And
Right.
then during your last term, if you want your party to continue, you do very well so that they will vote them again. But the people have an opportunity when they see that they were the weaknesses, which you will always see in every system, in every political party system. When you see the weaknesses of one side, you can correct them by choosing the other side to come and fix it. So we need term limits. 4 years,
Okay.
I think the US has demonstrated that is not a bad time. Some people use 5 years, but 7 years is too long. I don't think we need 7 years or just 4 or 5 years as well. And then with renewable one time. That's my opinion. The people can decide when we eventually draw our final constitution in Boya when we arrive there. And it will
Okay.
happen. We will arrive in Boya. Don't worry what Yaoundé is saying or what the French are saying. We will arrive Boya and we will establish our country. We will draw a constitution and will be an excellent country in Africa and the world.
Okay, I think we're going to be close. We may not have time to talk about diabetes at all because there's a APP meeting that's supposed to start now. But closing remarks. One more thing, also, Doc, is it has to do with number of parties. The United States has two predominant parties: the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and they also have a smaller parties like the Green Party and the Liberty Party. La République de Cameroon has a soup of parties, all of them there to really support Bia. They're just there to distort. I think they have, I don't know how many they have, but at least 10 parties, right?
Mhm. Basically, the US has predominantly two. They have a threshold in percentage where if you don't arrive that threshold, they will not even allow you to speak in public like in debates. So there are some other parties like the Libertarians, the Greens, but they don't arrive to that level where they can participate in presidential debates. That's why people don't hear about them. But the two
Right.
main ones are the Republicans and the Democrats. If you go to Western Europe, say Germany or France, you notice that there are about five of them in some places, or more. Well, the Republic one time had maybe over 300. The reason for creating this was just to cause confusion in order to rig the elections very easily. And most of those so-called 300 are people that are aligned with the rigging political party. That's
Yeah.
why when they are campaigning, those who have already aligned with them, they come out and they call themselves the presidential majority. That means they already tell you that they have already won because they're in the majority. And then if you read in the article that you were talking about, in 2004, when they had chosen eventually, say the opposition struggled to form one party and they couldn't, you had the CBDM, you have Frundi, you had Damjoya and another guy in Jamsi or whatever his name was. Close to the elections, those guys withdrew because they had given them bribes behind the scene. So, no, La République created all those things just to confuse people, rig elections, and continue what the French wanted them to do. uh, in a regular situation, just like in a family, you have mom and dad. Of course, you have children, but you have mom and dad. Those are the predominant forces. You need like two main dominant forces, what they would call in most places the conservatives and what some people call the liberals. You can argue with what is constitutes liberalism and what constitutes conservatism. Is a different debate for another time, but you need two main forces that of equal strength. That means this one can defeat this time and the other one is strong enough to defeat the other time. When they are too weak, then one strong man will get away with it, and La Republique is just using the so-called multiple parties to deceive the people and rig elections.
And then finally, I think that we will not have a need for an electoral college. I think in Ambazonia, it's going to just be a popular vote. That's my opinion. I'm not the one who's going to make that constitution, but hopefully that's what one difference that I don't think that Ambazonia will need an electoral college.
Well, it's interesting. It depends. I trust the wisdom of our people. What I mean is that
Yes.
the people are diverse. The people say in Donga Mantum are different from the people of Ndian or other parts of the country. So when eventually our people will gather in good faith and sit down and develop what they call their constitution, they will find the best way to make sure that everybody is happy to be in that nation.
Right.
And we don't have to call it electors like the US calls it. We can even give a different name. But basically, you want a country where people are happy to be a member of that country. They are proud and to be named as citizens of that country, and they work hard to develop the country and propel the country forward. You don't want people to feel like they are slaves and they have no freedom, and they are even their lives are at risk. The Republic goes around killing people just because they were born in Cameroon or in Ambazonia. So anyway, we will
All
call it
right.
whatever it is by the desire of our people.
Absolutely.
Is my opinion.
Okay. All right. Your closing comments, Doc? With this idea of the diabetes topic, we could have continued, but I'm afraid that we have to join the APP meeting, and that is coming. That is starting now at 8 p.m. Amba time. Your closing comments, please.
I would encourage our people to believe in themselves. They are God's children. They also have a right in the universe to exist and enjoy life. The people of the United States are looked up to, but they are not perfect. That's why you will see elements of their political system, actually, as well as the candidates and presidents that you don't like. It's not abnormal, it's not unusual. If you keep examining people, you'll find aspects of their character that you don't like. Some people that you may idolize, when you live with them under the same roof and you take a shower together, then you will know more about them, discover aspects of them that you don't like. So let us believe in ourselves that we too are good people. We too are God's creation. We also deserve life, which is dignified, and as time goes on, we will get it. Let's pray, because man is not over God. Let's pray that God will grant us that wisdom to actualize our nation in a way that it's functioning great and people are happy and doing well. That's my last take on it, and it's going to happen. I want our people to know that it's going to happen. Don't worry what Yaoundé or the French say.
Thank you so much, Doc. I really appreciate you educating our people every time on the horizon, the voice of the Amber woman. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Ambazonians, we've come to the end of today's program. We've promised to talk about diabetes. Again, this is the second time we've pushed it. The next show, we will start with diabetes and what we need to know about how to keep our people healthy. As we conclude this program, know that the Ambazonia we are fighting for is out there for us to grab. It's out there for us to build. It's out there for us to invest in. So please do not lose hope. Keep the faith. Support our government. Support the initiatives that come about so that sooner than later, pardon me, we will all be citizens of that great nation where we've learned from other developed nations of the world how the elections run, we've learned how La République follows everything that France dictates. And based on that comparison, we'll come up with one of the best nations in Africa. Until then, we'll see you next Friday. We may not have a show next Friday on the horizon. We may just have a replay of another show because some of us may be traveling. But until further notice, you will be kept abreast. Please, again, thank you for being the horizon, the voice of the Amba woman. And I want to appreciate our ASA who are there fighting day in, day out to protect our territory, to guard our people, and because the truth shall set us free. Thank you so much and have a great weekend. Bye for now.
You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amba woman, exclusively on ABC Amba TV.